Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live panel discussion. So I have my creative colleagues joining me today, and I'm sure they will be providing great insights and expand your vision on the topic. But let's wait for a couple of minutes for everyone else to join. In the meantime, you can grab your water or coffee, whatever you prefer. So Sadi, where are you located right now?
I am located in the Bay Area, and I am going to be relocating to Washington, D.C. very soon on the 17th.
Perfect. So,
what about you? Where are you located?
I'm from Istanbul.
I'm also from Istanbul originally. Where in Istanbul?
In Cihangir, Beyoğlu.
Oh, amazing. We're at the artist's paradise.
Yeah, exactly. Doc?
I'm based in Los Angeles, rainy Los Angeles.
Perfect. Adam?
I live in northern Florida, outside of Jacksonville, and I used to live in New York City for a very, very long time, then moved here during COVID.
Oh, that's cool. Yoni, I think you are in States as well.
Yes, I'm in New York. It was snowing last night, which is very, very cold, but yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Wow, so there are some attendees who are from Istanbul as well, Berlin, Germany, Austria. We have many people all around the world. So today Istanbul is rainy as well. Normally it should be snowy, but things are changing.
Wow, we have someone joining from Vietnam. That's amazing. Despite the time zone, that is commitment right there.
So we can kick off today's session. Again, welcome everyone. We call today's session Why Creative Optimization Leads to Successful App Install Campaigns. And we will be discussing ad creative optimization with some of the industry best minds here. So let me quickly introduce myself. And I'm Alp2 from Mobile Action and Searches.com. And I'm the head of client partner and helping out our partners to scale their app search ad campaigns and boost their iOS user acquisition efforts for quite some time. And let's get to know Yoni.
Hey everybody, my name is Yoni Markovitsky. I've been in the edtech space for around 10 years, and my current role is head of global supply at Moloko. I'm responsible for our supply partnerships and also leading key initiatives related to creative and rendering. Great to be here today.
Great. Sadi, can we get to know you?
Of course. Hi, my name is Sadi Muslu. I head up product marketing and content marketing here at Singular. Been here for about 4.5 years. Been in mobile for about 10 years. Used to run ads myself, primarily on social. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Great. Doug?
Hey everyone, I am the creative director over here at CRAFTSMAN Plus. Been in the ad tech space for, like everyone else, just about 10 years, maybe 11 years. Previously, I was over at Ad Colony running their global creative team, and then App on Board as well.
Perfect. And finally, Adam.
Hi, so I have my own growth marketing agency. We have roughly 80 or 90 people. And so we do a lot of app marketing work, primarily in the US. And I actually sold the agency about a year ago. So I work for these acquirer guys now. And before that, I started a conference business. So it's MAU Vegas. It's a once a year mobile app conference. It's actually coming up pretty soon. So check it out. And so I've been in the mobile space more or less since the iOS App Store opened. I was in-house at the time, and now I'm on the agency side.
Perfect. Glad to have you today as my guest, and welcome again, and thank you for joining us. So before we start, let me briefly introduce Mobile Action and Searchers.com. Mobile Action founded in 2013 and launched its App Intelligence and ASO Intelligence suites 2 years later. And we became a full stack App Store Insight suite with the launches of Market and Ad Intelligence tool in 2018. And 1 year later, Searchers.com was launched, and we became the official Apple Search Ads partner in 2020. And here are some our clients from the mobile app marketing industry that trusted Mobile Action and Searchers.com for the efforts. And let me briefly talk about today's agenda. I have some questions for my guests. We already collected some of the questions from your side with the help of the form on the landing page, and we will go through them. And most importantly, we will be answering your questions here. Our main talking point is at creative optimization. We will explain how you optimize your creatives, proper A/B testing, latest trends, and new ad formats to keep your campaigns relevant and fresh. And of course, measuring the performance of your ad creative to take necessary steps to optimize them. So some housekeeping rules before you ask. Yes, the recording of the session will be available. Please use the Q&A section and chat actively so that we can address your questions and read your comments. And finally, don't forget to vote for the poll questions. And if you don't have enough time, at the end, we will share the written answers of your questions to you as well. So before we start, let me share some great news. Next Wednesday, we will be sharing an ebook, Mastering the Art of Ad Creatives, your ultimate ad creative optimization playbook with you. It has contributed sections from our guests from Singular, Moloko, CRAFTSMAN, Thesis, Testing, and more. And I'm pretty sure that you will find it handy. It's completely free, and we are going to email to the attendees specifically for this webinar. So don't forget to download it and check it out. And shall we begin? Okay, then. So I would like to start with my first question, and it's start with some insights from the market. So a report shows that Twitter is struggling to retain top-tier advertisers at the moment. Its 10 largest advertisers last year spent 55% less compared to the year earlier. And when we check Snapchat's parent company, last month it's posted its lowest ever rates of quarterly growth and projected a sales drop for the current quarter. And Google's parent company Alphabet said ad sales at YouTube slipped nearly 8% in the last quarter. And also last year, Meta reported its first decline ever in the quarter revenue. So at the end of all this information, as you industry experts, what do you see in the markets? So can running ads at this platform get cheaper? And if they are getting cheaper, do you think this could be present an opportunity to differentiate our creative optimizations in the market? So Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we will see a little bit of a price break here as some big advertisers are exiting certain platforms. It's going to open up obviously a little bit more inventory, and bidding could get a little bit cheaper. I do see a lot of these platforms offering ad credits for new time advertisers. Something to take advantage if you are a mobile app marketer. You have to meet some of those requirements, but again, I think whether it's cheaper CPMs or CPIs, there are these kind of really great benefits that these platforms are offering as ad credits to kind of get more advertisers in. So I think if you're able to take advantage of those, you definitely should. I think those are great programs. I know Twitter has them, TikTok, probably Snap. I'm not too familiar right now with what programs they're running, but on top of that, there are also these great ad products that are kind of emerging to get those advertisers back. So looking at Spotlight for Snap, beginning to monetize. TikTok's going to start testing playables. things like that to kind of bolster up their ad product offering to lure advertisers back, as well as those incentive programs to get people in. I think they're going to be pretty powerful, and I think we should see, hopefully there's a little bit of a dip for all of us in price points, but I think there's going to be some really interesting things happening this year, especially in competition with ad quality on those networks.
Great. Yoni, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so due to the uncertainty that we've seen in the markets, what we've seen in general, that brand advertisers tend to spend less in Q4 last year and Q1 this year compared to previous years. And that basically leads to lower budgets and increase like or like a decrease in bid density and competition, because there is less DSPs or less advertisers or bidding at scale, which leads eventually to lower CPIs and show better ROAS for app marketers who actually bid and try to buy inventory. So at least from our side, we're connected to the 40 exchanges, and this trend was pretty much across the board. And what we do see that in the past 2 weeks or the last 3 weeks, we started to see that this trend is changing a little bit again. CPIs are going slightly, back up, but we'll have to see how things are proceeding towards the end of the quarter, really to understand where this is all going. But yeah, this is our observation from the last couple of weeks and months.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the view. And Adam, also, I would like to direct the same question to you. What do you think?
So I actually did a single day analysis of CPMs of our client data. So it's roughly like 100 million in Facebook spend year over year for Black Friday in the US last year and the year prior. And we did see like on average 20 to 30% CPM drop year over year, which is basically unprecedented. I mean, Facebook CPMs in particular have essentially risen consistently for forever, like every year for the last decade. So there definitely is a CPM pullback. There's a dramatic CPM pullback on Twitter, for sure. But I have not seen that the costs coming down have like magically made everything perform way better. So yes, CPMs are down, but we've seen install rates and conversion rates dip a bit too, so it kind of eats into some of the cost savings. But I think my main point is, if you look at the major channels, Facebook and Google account for a massive percentage of spend, Apple with search ads too, and then obviously you've got the programmatic ecosystem, playables and display and otherwise. But the Twitters and Snapchats and Pinterest of the world, and they're kind of a sideshow from my perspective. I mean, like the average advertiser is putting 90% of their budget into TikTok, Google, and Facebook. Everything else is for fun. So we spend in a lot of those channels, but we don't tend to spend that much time on them because like they're just so small, relatively speaking. Obviously, it depends a lot if you're talking about US or other countries. Certainly that's the case in the US.
Thank you for the answer. So getting a cheaper inventory has some pros and cons, as you mentioned, but in any way, you need to like optimize your traffic. And I believe A/B tests are a good way of doing that. So could you please walk us through how to run an A/B test like a pro for your ad creatives? And can these metrics change for top, middle, and bottom funnel marketing? So Adam, we can go on with you again.
Yeah, sure. So we generally do most creative testing on the Android side if there's an Android app available, because presently the visibility into the lower funnel metrics is so much better. You do run a little bit of a risk because sometimes stuff performs better on iOS than on Android, but that's just like a trade-off that we're willing to make to have the lower funnel visibility. I'm sure we'll talk more about SK Ad Network. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we generally will group creatives into like their own ad group or ad set, depending on the platform, so that essentially we force the platforms to spend on the new assets. Because if you just upload stuff to an existing account, an existing business as usual campaign, a lot of times the algorithms have heavily favorite the like incumbent existing creatives. And so you don't really get a fair read. So we force spend to them. And most importantly, if we're talking about video assets, which 9 out of 10 times we really look a lot at hook rates and hold rates. Essentially, what percentage of people watch at least 3 seconds of the video and what percentage of people watch at least half of the video? Because those are really good leading indicators that, this version is maybe better than this version because it's capturing more attention. Like if you have a really low hook rate, by definition, nobody is seeing the creatives that you're making because nobody's watching more than 3 seconds. They're just continuing to scroll. So those are kind of the main points that we use. And our average creative test will have maybe 5 or 6 permutations of whatever that concept is. And hopefully it just works out right. And if it doesn't work out right, but it has some leading indicators like a strong hook rate, for example, we might do another, round of iteration, so on and so forth. So that's kind of how we do creative testing, primarily on Facebook and to a lesser extent on Google UACs. Yeah.
Great. So Doug, do you have any add-on?
Yeah. So outside of kind of the platform tools that are built in, where A/B testing and whatnot, at Craftsman Plus, what we like to do is take a really zoomed out approach and kind of look at campaign strategy, right? We have our own proprietary kind of matrix that we use, that we've tested over time to kind of really map out how we want to A/B test. Again, much more at the conceptual level, a little bit more zoomed out, and kind of start with emotional triggers. Is this going to be FOMO? Is this going to be an achievement kind of trigger for each kind of campaign creative? And then we start to drill down male, female, music, CTAs, messaging from there to really kind of build out this matrix of what we want to kind of test. With that, it's actually kind of nice too, because we have a really good record of what we've tested. We also have a really good roadmap of what we want to do based on the data signals that we're getting back on this given network. So outside of kind of what Adam was talking about, again, like the more kind of tactile stuff on given networks, I think having a really good zoomed out approach on where you want to do with your campaign, starting at the conceptual level, is going to set you up for success, and also give you that roadmap of, okay, when you're kind of ready to kind of start testing new things or iterating, you're going to know what's happened, and you're going to have a really good idea of what to start testing next. And as well as kind of mixing and matching the winning combination. So, I think there's a lot of great tools within the platforms, but, also starting with, your own matrix, which makes sense to effectively kind of control the campaigns.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very valuable comments. By the way, we got a question related to this topic. Other than hook rates, what metrics do you look at for creative testing success? So Adam, do you have any comment to that?
Yeah, so hook and hold, right? So 3 seconds and then half of the video. We'll look at the actual click-through rate. We'll look at, of course, the install rate. And a popular metric in the mobile ecosystem is installs per mil, IPM. Never really understood why people are so fixated on it. But anyway, people love that IPM. So we look at these IPM numbers. But at the end of the day, we try to look at the full funnel per creative, because there are many instances where click-through rates or hook rates or whatever don't correspond at all with the objective that we actually care about, cost per level 2 completed or whatever it is. So provided there is enough spend, and that's obviously the constraint, we actually just try to look at the actuals, say, oh, well, this ad has a really high click-through rate, but it's driving really low quality, or we often see instances where we might have super high engagement hook rates, but then the install rates are super low because we've dragged a bunch of people in, and then they're like, oh, I don't actually want this. Like, this is not, this is not consistent with what I thought it was going to be. So honestly, we really look at the lower funnel things. Like, none of my clients care about cost per install or anything like that. They care about some real metric, somewhere in the funnel. So if you have enough data, that's what we would do 100% of the time. If you're more budget limited, you got to kind of just sort of hope for the best and say, well, high hook rate, low CPI, probably, most likely is going to be the best result. But that's not always the case. It's actually often not the case, particularly in non-gaming verticals. Gaming, the feedback loop's a little tighter because there's a lot of engagement in the first session. In non-gaming, somebody might not be buying the thing for 30 days. So it's really hard to gauge, just based on CPI, whether it's the right audience or not.
Thank you, Adam. So I would like to go back to the A/B testing part. And there's no doubt that this A/B testing is effective to find what you're looking for. But like, let's assume that you run your A/B tests and you find some creative that are really working, and you're spending your budget, things were going great, and you at some point you feel like your creative is not that effective enough. For sure, like we are talking about in here, the creative fatigue. How can you avoid that? Can your creative stay and fresh for longer periods? Sadi, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because there is no like set frequency rate or time limit at which creative performance starts to decay. It really can vary on the campaign and the setup of the campaign, the objective, whether it's brand, which tends to run longer, or whether it's, I don't know, more performance or like related to a promo code or some sort of offer you're running. But there's no given number. Like I remember when I first started advertising on Facebook, it was like when you reach a frequency of 5, your given audience has seen this creative 5 times. Let's set a creative refresh. No. We were chatting with Adam, and he had a well-known saying that we say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so what you need to look at is performance decaying? And is that decay, I would say, happening for at least a week? There may be a blip in performance. You may see that 1 or 2 days, it seems like performance is decaying a little bit, but it could, in some times, actually rebound back up, and you're good. You don't need to change. So yeah, really just follow the performance trend, whether it's based on installs or IPMs or click-through rates. Follow the performance trend, and as soon as you start to see at least a week of sustained decaying of performance, it's time for a creative refresh. There's no set time limit. I've had customers, even in the gaming space, that have ran creatives for 6 months where they're like, I'm sick of seeing this creative. Like at this point, how is my audience not sick of it? But that creative is continuing to be their top performer. There's no reason to turn it off.
Doug, what do you think about that?
Yeah, at Sadi's point, watch the data. That's going to tell you when you're kind of hitting that decay. And then don't do knee-jerk reactions to when it does, right? Give it some time to see if it does do that rebound. If you do find yourself in creative decay and creative fatigue, having something again like this matrix A/B testing that you kind of set up will kind of help you lead to where you need to go with new creatives or what to do. I think there's usually some low-hanging fruit. Taking your winning creative, kind of Adam was talking about like hook rates and things like that, remixing that creative, maybe moving, things that were at the end, messaging at the end to the beginning. So as a scroll, it's going to look a little bit fresh, but the core message is there. The core content's still there. So the winning combinations are still in that creative. And what you've kind of effectively done is just reimagined it or reworked it a little bit. A concept of modular video where you're able to take snippets and kind of just rearrange it for multiple combinations within an overall effective creative winning campaign is a way that you could maybe kind of maneuver very effectively and very quickly there. But again, I think having a strategy around A/B testing from the get-go is going to lead you down to what you want to go for next without completely shooting in the dark, I guess, if you will. So.
Thanks for these valuable comments. So after your comments, like another question came to my mind about the personalizations, because like even if you find your ideal creative with the help of the A/B testing and tried new ones to keep your campaign optimized, etc., people enjoy personalized features in general. And a recent McKinsey article showed that like almost 70% of the consumers expect personalized communications and offers. But how can you personalize your ad creatives in the post-IDFA world? So I especially direct this question to Yoni.
Yeah, so I would say that in general, I mean, users are receiving the same ads over and over again, even when we have personalized data, right? And which shows that even today, I mean, things can get better. But yeah, I would say like in general, to your question, I think that utilizing contextual data with machine learning, the combination, can really lead to effective results in the post-IDFA world. For example, that will be like contextual data coming from developers that have, enormous data and like enormous value that can be unlocked, or designing different creatives, for various apps categories or user type also holds, in my opinion, very big opportunity. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say that, personalized data will always be superior to contextual, right? But serving more relevant creatives using contextual data, in my opinion, has a huge opportunity and could be a key to close this gap, when we're talking about the non-advertising ID world, which is getting closer and closer to us. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, Adam, do you have anything to say about that?
Two things. One, like his example is a perfect use case, i.e., someone is playing a game about wizards, and so probably with context, other ads for games about other fantasy stuff like dragons or whatever would be the best ads to serve. That totally makes sense. Outside of the like gaming and programmatic use cases, sort of by definition, the campaigns are generally untargeted. Automated app ads on Facebook, not personalizable because they're just totally generic. Universal app campaigns on Google, not personalizable. TikTok too now. So like, I don't see as much like one-to-one personalization, but I'll give you a real use case. This is outside of mobile, but I think it applies. We have a hair care client, and theirs is a custom hair care based on your hair type, hair color, et cetera. So we create campaigns that are focused creatively on red hair people, curly hair people, straight hair people, blonde hair people, et cetera. We still target the campaigns on a totally broad basis. So we're not even attempting to target people with red hair because it's not even really possible. But we have them in separate campaigns with separate budgets, and we run different creatives in each bucket. And so we let the algorithms do the targeting, essentially let the algorithms do the personalization based on performance, but we're still providing the input that would allow them to find the different segments, or, or in Yoni's gaming case, creatives that are more for kids and more for parents and more for whatever, like you still lean into the fact that targeting has largely been automated or, is machine driven at this point in our industry, but you're cool with that, but you still think about the fact that there are different types of consumers and therefore different creative might speak to those consumers. I feel like that's the best you can do. Like you're swimming with the current, you're not trying to fight the algorithms and try to be hyper targeted. My answer would have changed 5 years ago, because you actually could get super granular and you could be really targeted, but it doesn't really work anymore. So that's kind of how we approach it practically. And I think that works in a lot of verticals.
Mm-hmm. Great points. Thank you. And like when we talk about this like post IDFA world, maybe some of our audiences might be curious about the scan update. So as you know, Scan 4.0 is live, and I would like to hear your opinion, especially Saadi. So what are your first impression of this latest update? Like what does Scan 4.0 means for our ads creatives?
Yeah, I mean, I think that seeing the updates and the enhancements made to measurement with Scan 4 was really a bit of a relief and was something that we were excited to see, because let's be honest, when SK Ad Network rolled out, it felt like for us digital marketers, like the rug was pulled out from underneath us. And I think that the industry made a lot of noise about that and was clear about the feedback that there needs to be major improvements made to, of course, protect consumer privacy, but still be able to get these signals on what's working and what's not working, which I think is also important to the end consumer who doesn't, I would assume, want to see a bunch of irrelevant ads. But with Scan 4, particularly the fact that they're going to be able to send multiple postbacks instead of one, with conversion values to enrich your reporting and more deterministically understand what is actually working and how much business impact, whether that's revenue, ad revenue, or engagement, it's driving for your business. So we were really excited about that. And I think it's interesting because with creative reporting, that was basically completely, creative level reporting was basically off the table when SK Ad Network came. It was already difficult, mind you, to do creative level ROI measurement. Depending on the ad network you work with, sometimes you'd have to pick between publisher level and creative level. So you never really had the full picture, but it was a lot more complete than before. But anywho, going back to Scan 4, with the enhancements that Apple has made, I assume by listening to advertisers and the feedback from the industry, I hope, Now we're going from two digits to 4 digits in the source identifier, which theoretically means that advertisers can start encoding more dimensions like creative into their conversion reporting. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself and too optimistic, because it's not just up to the SK Ad Network framework and the advertiser or even their MMP. It's also up to the networks within the ecosystem and how the networks will leverage the additional 2 digits that we now will have. Because again, like they did previously, some ad networks may opt to encode publisher level data instead of the creative level data. And some might even completely bypass creative and publisher level data and just give you geo level, like country level data. So additional granularities in your reporting do vary by network to network. We're going to have to just wait and see how the different networks make the most of the updates that are made, and that will determine what possibilities advertisers have around that. I think that there's also one more dependency, which is this new concept of crowd anonymity. So the number of installs per campaign, which dictate crowd anonymity tier you're in, are going to make a lot of difference in the amount of conversion values you're able to get. So there's going to be 0 to 3 as tiers. Some with some conversion reporting postbacks with a lot more detailed data, and some with very anonymized and vague kind of data. So you're going to still have to surpass these new thresholds that are put into place. We just figured out privacy thresholds on SK Ad Network 3.0. And now there's this crowd anonymity factor that we still, we're going to have to test and figure out what it takes to be able to get deterministic conversion reporting back. But I have some hope that there's going to be improvements there once it rolls out.
Yeah, thank you so much for this detailed explanations. So like at this point, actually, I would like to circle back to the creative topic here, so especially creativity and credibility relations. So I guess like one of the easiest ways to grab attention in the eyes of the consumers is looking credible. And if you have an established brand, that could be easy for you. But what if your brand is not well known enough? How could you build credibility through your creatives? And is it the design and maybe, I don't know, user-generated content, or is it getting mentioned by the influencers? Yoni, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I will start and just try to keep it like general, like what we've seen in many cases that relatively small or new developers that are not very familiar with the space, will try to grab attention by creating clickbait or including inappropriate visuals to drive more clicks, to drive more engagement. So it might work initially, the creative will, maybe generate like good performance at the beginning, but eventually it will get flagged by the publisher who's not very happy, like see like very high churn rate or like get very bad reviews. And exchanges and networks, will have to block it because publishers, complain about that. So I would recommend focus on doing the right things in the right way, clean creative, clean messaging, avoid creating misleading content, which is also something which is get a lot of flags from publishers, networks, exchanges, basically by everybody. So yeah, I would say that finding shortcuts might, might help in the short term, right? But the risk on your credibility and your ability to scale up your brand and your business in the future might get to challenges if you're going to get flagged. So that's going to be my take on that.
Perfect. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Noni nailed it on the head. Clean design, trustworthy design is, first and foremost. Anything that's going to be clickbaity, you'll lose trust right away. Another important key thing here is messaging. Be clear and consistent in your messaging and be true to what your value prop is. I think, once people read something, they get into, a given app or IP, and it's not exactly what you advertise, your trust is going to go down, right? So I think just making sure that you have a clear, consistent message and your message is true to what you're advertising is crucial. Other ways to kind of leverage things, UGC is very popular. I think it can be cheap and effective. I don't think you really necessarily need to kind of run down influencers, especially if you're advertising on a budget. Look to creators that emulate your users, right? I respond really, really well with, other ads I see or ads that I see that have people that, are I can assimilate to or familiarize myself with. So I think there's ways to kind of leverage, a lot of credibility through, again, design, maybe testimonials with UGC and such like that. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for, cheap and effective UGC that still is very trustworthy, as well as great design.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's a related question. Maybe you can answer that, Doug. So there's the question is any guidance on potential conflict between creatives that perform well but are not liked by the branding department of a company. So do you have any suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we run into, especially on the creative side as an agency side. Sometimes ads perform that might not be to the best brand spec. And I think that's a conversation that, as a brand or, gaming company, that needs to happen internally between the stakeholders, right? What is the right look and move? What is more important here, right? Is it brand perception within the ad, or is it actually driving performance? So there's a balance there that needs to kind of be upheld. And that's really something that I think, stakeholders, within that client need to kind of come to agreement on of what is right for the brand. Within kind of, again, it could be well performing, but might not be the best quality looking. But it also comes back to a little bit of where you're running. Something like UGC with not a lot of high production on TikTok might perform well, versus maybe you go with a more higher produced UGC on something like, Meta or Snap. So I think, one, recognizing where your tolerances are, where your compromises are on how, where your creative quality needs to be. And then kind of leveraging that for different networks probably makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Doug. So Saadi, I would like to lead the same question to you. Do you have any comments about this credibility topic?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Yoni and with Doug and everything they said. Maybe just to add a bit, I think that social proof, the whole don't just take it from us, take it from our customers, is a really, really good approach, especially if you don't have massive brand awareness and recognition yet. I think that it's really been popularized on TikTok social campaigns of having, whether it's an influencer or just regular old users that are relatable to me, demoing a product, whether it's a game or a face cream or whatever, how easy it is, how it changed their life, how it solved a pain point or brought them joy in some way. That tends to perform really, really well. You might even want to layer that UGC content of testimonials or demoing with some PR credibility. Maybe your eye cream was voted top eye cream by Cosmopolitan magazine. Drop that in there as well as an overlay on top of the UGC. Maybe you have some really lovely customer reviews that you've collected. You might want to layer that and also test between them, right? Test between going with a, PR mentioned approach versus a UGC demo approach versus a straight up testimonial. Maybe even a founder's story might also, like the founder speaking about what drove them, what was their mission in releasing this product or this service, and how they wanted to change the world. Test between them, layer them, test them together, and you'll find some winning combinations, not just on TikTok, even on other channels. You'll be surprised.
Thank you, Saadi. Adam, I think your valuable comments will be also so valuable here, your comments.
Yeah, so on the whole conflict thing, I deal with this every day. My main answer is, okay, so Facebook in particular has this really great, they call it lift testing tool, but you can measure relative to a control group, the impact on brand metrics and on performance metrics. So I say, okay, we don't like these creatives because they don't fit the brand. And we do like these creatives because they do fit the brand, but maybe are lower performance. Let's run a lift test and just actually understand what brand awareness impact these sets of creatives are having. So aided awareness, unaided awareness, favorability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because like you got to kind of quantify it. It's like, well, if the performance stuff we just don't like aesthetically, to me, that's not good enough. Like you got to show me that, yes, it performs better, but it's actually not having the same sort of brand impact that we believe our other stuff is having. So I always try to quantify it. And then my backup option, if the brand team has basically more control, I say, all right, well, let's run a lot of our performance creatives like Sadi's talking about on a whitelisted basis. So whitelisted from influencers, Spark posts on TikTok would be the equivalent. Because generally brand teams are like kind of willing to let the UGC, user generated stuff, like be whatever. And then the stuff from the brand can be whatever higher level of elevation. And so it's just a way to avoid conflict. It's just like, I'm going to work primarily through UGC creative that's whitelisted just so I like can avoid the whole discussion. It shouldn't be like that. That's like just a symptom of a dysfunctional organization, in my opinion. But if you have that dynamic, like that's kind of how we try to deal with it as an agency.
Thank you, Adam. So, well, we mentioned about the importance of credibility, and I believe brands are getting much more credible when they listen their customers' feedbacks and act accordingly. So at this point, I would like to ask, could you include qualitative data such as users' feedback or sentiment analysis into your ad creatives? Doug, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, qualitative feedback on ads is really good to know, and I think it gives you a directional signal. I'm always a little skeptical of, once you see an ad and it kind of asks you a survey of did you like this or was this relevant? You have to always remember that sometimes you're interrupting a user's experience. So their sentiment might just be in a negative headspace already, even though they might like the product, the IP, you might get some mixed signals there, right? So I always take that with a grain of salt. I think, really taking that zoomed out approach and looking at all the data is going to be where you want to net out. The kind of qualitative stuff is a little bit of that cherry on top of everything else, right? Use it for directional signals. Are you doing the right thing? Is it kind of hitting the mark? Sure. But, mix that in with everything else that you're seeing on the campaign level.
Mm-hmm. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we don't do that much post facto sentiment analysis. I think can very quickly become fake, honestly. So we really look at, we try to have the creative strategy very much informed by surveying and, personas and so on. Those are the ideas that you then create. But we're generally not big proponents, because at the end of the day, we're running mobile ads. You could spend $500 against the thing and basically get the answer, right? So, any extra level of effort to me is mostly a waste of time. But certainly having a really informed strategy process is really valuable, because like, why are you showing this instead of that? Presumably that's hopefully for a good reason.
Yoni, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you with everything being said. I think that first and foremost, the data can tell us most of the answers. But I personally really like the user feedback that users can leave on Google Ads, and I think also some other networks support it, which in my opinion is a powerful tool to understand the effectiveness of the creative, like how things can be improved. So, for example, do you want to flag something? It was an inappropriate content. I don't want to see these ads anymore. So I think that this feedback on creative, together with like a more data-driven like CTR, IPM, ROAS, with this feedback of like why I didn't like this ad or why I like this ad, gives like a much better and holistic view on the campaign, which eventually can lead the advertisers to come up with the right insights and the creative studio to come up with the right insights. So yeah, I would say that in general, this is something that is not being used today. But back to your question about, hey, like in a world where IDFA or advertising ID is not available, this is another aspect on like how can you get data and feedback from the user, and how can you improve it and get better.
Yoni, thank you so much. So by the way, like we have a recommendation. from our attendees. So they're expecting your 3 recommendations at the end of the session about today's topic in general. So we can cover it at the end of the session, but I would like to go on with the flow. So when we talk about the user feedback, I just remember the end card poll questions creatives I previously made. And I think new technological improvements helped us to improve our creative richness. I also wonder your opinion about how can advertisers implement new technologies like augmented reality, machine learning, AIs, like artificial intelligence into their app marketing strategies. Yoni, do you have any opinion about that?
Yeah. So yeah, I would say that AI, has a huge and already has a huge impact on, the way that campaigns run. But I think that, over time, with the current technology, with the new technology, which is basically releasing every new month, we hear about like a new product that comes up or like a new technology is coming up. I think that the connection of like AI and creative has a very strong connection. It's only going to get developed in a world where there is not enough data about the user, and there's going to be like a lot of like testing that will need to be created in order to figure out like what is like the right messaging and the right creative that you want to show to a certain cohort or to a certain vertical. We talked earlier also about contextual data. So I think that generative AI for creative has a huge potential. We see it today to some extent, but I think it's only going to get more and more, visible and common, in the next couple of quarters and years.
Mm-hmm. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, with all the stuff around AI right now, I think it's, as a creative, I think we should be leveraging it. I think we should use it for inspiration. Obviously, I think there's always a personal human element to it that needs to kind of, touch it up, but it's just another tool in the toolbox. So if you have access to it, you should use it. I haven't played around much with the, image generation AI, but, something like ChatGPT is really kind of cool to get inspiration and draw from, and especially like, over here at Craftsman Plus, looking at our studio platform, we're looking at ways to integrate some of that AI tech into the platform that can, auto-generate some, take a look at creatives, auto-generate some different kind of iterations and things like that. So we're definitely leaning into it to where it nets out or kind of where it kind of services. We're still kind of exploring that, but overall, as a, in the creative community, I think, leveraging these tools, is everyone should be looking into it. It's, a hot topic. I think it's just going to get more sophisticated and, can just add a little bit more into your toolbox, I guess, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Adam, do you have any comments?
Yeah, so we've been doing, copy.ai, chat GPT-3 stuff for text for, a while. We have not yet delved into the realm of the actual art, the visuals themselves. And I think especially for the gaming vertical, so obviously that could be really beneficial. Probably for non-gaming too, maybe less so though. But yeah, we certainly now are generating most copy initially through some machine, and then we're manually editing or picking the versions that we like. So that's commonplace even today. But I think it has massive potential. A big problem in our ecosystem is cloning, right? Cloning games. This stuff is going to make cloning games 1,000 times easier, right? Because you could take a core concept, feed it into a machine, and then spit back a visually distinctive but effectively duplicative version of the underlying game. So that's gnarly. That's that'd be really interesting, I think. But yeah, it's still pretty early innings. If I have 20 or 30 designers on my team. A couple of them have maybe messed around with a couple things. You know what I mean? I feel like that's where most people are at practically, that kind of stage.
Oh, thank you, Adam. So we talk about different technologies in mobile marketing, and I count Playable as technological improvement somehow. So there are good way to increase engagement and grab the attention, hook the audiences into the ads. But I believe that there's a stereotype about Playable ads. So my question in here is it something that only mobile gaming apps leverage? Doug, what do you think?
No, I really believe playable ads can be for everyone, brand games alike. I think there's a lot of gamification that can be leveraged on a brand level that kind of goes more towards brand awareness. With that, obviously KPIs are going to be a little bit different. Time spent, number of replays in your playable ad. But I think effectively you can actually, leverage playable ads very well for brands, especially given the inventory that you're running in. If you're running in a lot of rewarded video zones, maybe those viewers are going to be in the gaming mindset. So it makes sense that, if there's a break or they're wanting extra gems, so they go watch a rewarded video, you're giving them a gamified experience, which they're already in that mindset, right? So I think that can be very effective. So no, I think there's, ways to leverage playable ads for everyone. And, whether that's a true game mechanic, if you're a banking app and, you're catching falling coins and over amount of like 10 seconds, and those seconds are years, they could say in 10 years, you could save this much. Sure, that's obvious. But there's other ways to leverage some of these experiences as well. Like, interactive UGC is something that, we've been kind of doing a little bit at Craftsman Plus. That's, taking UGC content, but kind of doing a choose your own adventure, a little outside the realm of maybe typical playable, but giving that interactive experience that kind of raises, both awareness and engagement with the brand. So, outside of, your typical maybe gamified mechanics, there's other ways to leverage some of these types of platforms for effective use of brand.
Yoni, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I would say that at least on our side here, Moloko, most of the advertisers we've seen running playables are in the gaming category, but the numbers of non-gaming advertisers or trying to explore playables or interactive end cards is definitely growing, which is a very, very good sign. I would think that, advertisers outside of gaming, figure out how to do it successfully, working with the right partners to make it work. So I think it's a very, very good trend. Couple of more comments and thoughts about playables. It's not an easy task to build a successful playable. I mean, people think it's just like, very easy, just try to imitate your gameplay into HTML5, but it requires a lot of back and forth. We talked about A/B testing. So a lot of like versions until you're able to find the right formula that actually works for you. Another aspect that a lot of people overlook or, don't put like a lot of attention is how actually the playable or the HTML5 actually works, in the SDK of the exchanges or the networks that you work with. So like this is like another piece so that you need to validate that the HTML5 actually works as expected. And, it's funny because like in many cases we see at Moloko that, static JPEGs are actually work better, than playable end cards or, playables. So I think it's a lot of that is related to the fact that, the playable experience needs to be built by, a great creative studio and, a designer that, would be able really to find the strength of the game and to build a successful gameplay. And yeah, I think this is like the way and the key for, for you to build a successful playable and unlock this great opportunity it has.
Thank you, Yoni. So maybe we can get final comments from Adam.
Yeah, well, so I don't mean to be critical, but so playable inventory is in gaming. So there's smart money from gaming. And then with respect, there's dumb money from brands, right? Because they're just getting roasted. They're spending money to drive views or whatever. What I have not seen a lot of is the middle, which is non-gaming, but performance advertisers making playables work. There are a few instances of that, but that's the big unlock, like, because there's a ton of inventory, a ton of inventory. So I think 99% of playable spend that I've seen is gaming because you're advertising to people already playing games, or it's quote unquote brand advertisers who, probably are just lighting the money on fire from my perspective. So I do think there's a lot of potential, but I have not seen it get easily unlocked. The one thing that we've done is we do like sort of survey/quiz flows. Those are interactive, and people like answering quizzes generally online. So that, that can work in that kind of format. But I think it's probably, Yoni would know better than me, but sub 5% of spend or something is from performance non-gaming advertisers and that kind of inventory. So it would be like a way low priority if I was prioritizing, you know what I mean? Like uploading one extra ad to my Google UAC campaign that probably spends 50% of my budget is probably where I would put that time instead, 99% of the time.
Adam, thank you so much for this valuable comments. So actually, I would like to move on to the questions that we collected. And like I realize that there are many iOS creativity questions regarding to the custom product pages. Actually, like I would like to mention about them a bit, and then maybe I can lead you some questions here. So the one question is, does it make more sense to analyze competitors' creatives for a single channel for insights, or better to invest cross-channel analysis? So I believe investing in cross-channel analysis makes much more sense. Maybe your creative is killing in Meta, and you see that you are outperforming your competitor in that network. But what if your competitor catch something that is working in TikTok? So cross-channel analysis will allow you to see the big picture. For example, using mobile actions ad intelligence tool, you can view how much impression that your app and your competitor is getting, and how these creatives are performing in each ad network, which creative is performing well or underperforming in which country, in the specific duration, so on and so forth. So if you haven't used it, I find it pretty functional. You can use it, check it as well. And like there are some questions about CPPs. I would like to go on with them. So what is the financial impact of using CPP, and how can I apply this at creative practices that you will discuss in this webinar to improve my visibility on App Store? So let me answer these two questions together. I think Dan asked them. Custom product pages are overlap with your questions. So you can create up to 35 custom product pages and make them based on the search intent in the ad group level. So you can use these creatives in the other ad networks as well. So this is an advantage. Basically, you're an App Store version of landing page. And try to create this different custom product pages with different screenshots or creatives as much as possible, in a way that you can underline your apps in different features or special events, or maybe you can use seasonality as well. And also in a way that you can target different languages or different regions with the custom product pages. So you can even bid on your competitors and create specific CPPs for the people that are searching for your competitors. So it's pretty functional for competitor campaign as well. And regarding to the Natalia's question, so I understand it has what it's like when you mentioned about the finance, it might be regarding to the return of investment of the CPPs. And that actually depends on your app's category and based on your competitors, how much you are bidding in that specific campaign, in the ad group, etc., etc. So with that being said, we have measured up 5 times increase in install rates with some of our clients that leverage CPP correctly. By the way, our CPP intelligence could be a good starting point for you. It's completely free now. And just go and sign up to Mobile Action, check your competitor CPPs or like best CPPs in your category, and like how much impressions share they are getting. And you can get like industry expert views from with the help of our consultation service. And even we are creating some custom product page creatives for you. So you can directly DM me, or you can click on a demo button in our website. So if you can communicate with us, we will more than happy to help you. And there are additional questions. So the one says, I usually use a matrix to test the audience, message, and channel. So this can give us a detailed overview of what is working and what's not. What do you think about this approach? So Doug, do you have any comment on it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think having a matrix and knowing kind of where you want to go is going to set you up for success. So not only does it keep track of where you've been, it's going to kind of like give you a little bit of a roadmap of where you want to go. So I love the idea of having a testing matrix, and something again that we're leveraging pretty heavily on here at Craftsman, and when we get into kind of campaign strategy with our clients, is making sure that we have that roadmap so we can continually be iterating and finding those winning combinations. So yeah, I think having that matrix set up ahead of time is pretty crucial a successful campaign.
Okay, I have one more question to you. So actually, this is 3 questions. Should I make a creative video like my competitors hit creative? This is the one. The second one is, with the game industry, to reduce the CPI of creative, should I use in-game content to advertise or use trending factors to attract users? This is a good question. And lastly, how to make call to action in creative videos effective?
Okay. Yeah, so you ultimately want to stand out, right? You want to set yourself away from your competitor by doing competitor analysis and looking at what other hit creative might be, what's the most popular one out there that's driving a lot of their performance. I'd say analyze that creative, take away the key components. What's working for them? Is it messaging or creative visuals, right? Look at their winning combination, but recreate that in your own and separate yourself. So it's not really about, copying anything, but just look at what they're leveraging in their winning creative. How does that relate to your IP, and how do you make it your own? I think that's probably where you kind of want to net out there. In-game creative versus some other kind of trends to lower CPI, I think that just goes back into testing, right? If you know where the heat is in your IP in your game, obviously you want to kind of flaunt that, you want to test that. But then, looking at UGC and everything like that, the testimonials, I think Sadi was kind of talking about before, giving that kind of credibility to your game or IP is going to be something that you do want to test, and you will find that winning combination throughout. I'll even say like testing playables, and that is probably something that you want to kind of do there. Again, to find, that winning creative, you're going to need to test, and you're going to need to test at scale. And, hopefully you can kind of find, whatever winning creative. Maybe there's a silver bullet that works across all platforms, but obviously testing different creatives across all platforms is going to be pretty crucial. And again, going back to like having a matrix set up of what you want to do is going to lead you to success and keep you well organized. Call to action, effective call to action. Something that we kind of look at is instead of saying download now, maybe if you're a first person shooter, it's join the action. Leverage messaging and CTAs that are core to your IP. Also, obviously, localization is going to be something that you're going to want to test. So, I think those 2 things are, something to look for. What makes it uniquely your own is, the messaging and kind of your tone of voice from your app, and leveraging that in your creative and even your CTAs. And then, again, leverage localization. Maybe that's just the end card. Maybe that's just the CTA, but also the video. So you can test a lot of those different combinations, depending on how much in-house support or creative support that you have. But those would be something that I'd recommend as far as kind of to move the needle, I guess, if you will.
Great, Doug, so much for this detailed explanations. And we have plenty of questions, and thank you so much for your interest. But we are running out of time at the moment. So I would like to go to the last question of our attendee. So what would be your let's not limit it by 3, but let's ask you directly, what are your recommendations after this, just as a summary? Sadi?
Well, as someone coming from the mobile measurement space, I think that one thing Adam talked about earlier that I really liked was the full funnel analysis tip. So it's about being able to, obviously the first KPI to measure is engagement KPIs. You talked about hook rate. It's about impressions, click-through rate, but you should also be very careful and try to monitor the impact that those creatives actually have on your business, whether that's ad revenue, whether that's in-app purchases, or kind of like if you're more of an engagement-based app, making sure you can kind of measure that. I would recommend, because to his point, you could have creatives that you're spending a lot of money on that people are clicking on that's actually not generating high value quality users. So that's just kind of like burning your money, as we discussed earlier.
Thank you, Sadi. Yoni, what would be your recommendations?
Yeah, I would say that, I have nothing to add. I totally agree with what Sadi mentioned. I don't know, maybe other the panelists have anything else to say. This one.
Yeah, I would say one very practical thing. If you haven't tried running whitelisted ads on Facebook and you haven't tried running Spark posts on TikTok, it's worth trying. Because that is the major, if not primary driver for a lot of brands, particularly outside of the mobile gaming space. And I think mobile in general is sort of catching up now to using more UGC content, using more whitelisting. So I strongly recommend having those in the mix, because we often see, particularly on TikTok, that they're are like our top performers. So that's my main advice.
Doug?
Yeah, I think my advice would be, start with a strategy, know your strategy. I'm a big fan of a testing matrix, right? Know where you want to go. Take a look at all the data signals from the campaign to let you know where to drive to. And test video, test statics, test playables, test UGC, test in-game content. It's the best thing you can do. Everyone knows performance advertising is a little bit of a numbers game as much as it is ad quality. One other thing too, obviously, within playables, test file sizes. That's another thing too. I didn't get to mention that. One thing that we've seen success in is not only file size, but number of moves within playable. So again, I'd say just know your strategy, have a good roadmap of what you want to do, and then listen to the data signals coming in.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much for everyone for attending. I hope it was a fruitful session for you. I hope you learned something new here. And I especially want to thank you for our attendees here. I hope to see everyone in our upcoming webinars. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody, thanks.
Have a good one.